Hi, I'm Kathy Carriage, and I'm with the Community Sustainability Commission, and I'm here this morning at the Farm to Table Expo. We're in the green at the end of First Street in Benicia. This is sponsored by Benicia Community Gardens, and we've got all kinds of booths here. We're going to have speakers all about sustainable agriculture, permaculture. We have community-supported agriculture here, many different farms. We've got the Benicia Community Garden, our new sustainable backyard program, which was funded by the commission. That's a great one to find out about because we're going to be looking to have some people growing food forests in Benicia. And some exciting booths here about soils, different ways to augment your soil. We'll have entertainment, lectures, and games for kids. Thanks.
I put in, some people have two different depths, a higher depth and a lower depth for the roots to go deeper. But I stagger the holes on the pipe here, and I put a little one in the very bottom, which is the true bottom, and it makes it to where it will drain out, but this makes it to where it kicks to both sides. And so you just fill it, and also when I do it, I always put in two sides because you can clean it. You can't actually put a wire through it and drag a cloth through it if you wanted to clean it, you know. So anyway, it works really well. I don't put any glue on the joints at all, because when the bed is done and if you want to change it or whatever, you can just take the whole thing apart, because if a little bit of water leaks out of here, that's fine.
So creating a 300-acre productive and educational farm.
Thank you. Very good.
We're gonna hear from Tara her story, how it happened, where the farm is now, and what is the future of food that you think. Please welcome Tara Smith.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Am I on? Thanks. Is that good? Okay, we're good. Thanks for coming. I appreciate that. And this is funny that it's all women, because this is really what women do. Oh my God. I'm sorry, Larry. Larry, we love you. The one man that's here representing all mankind.
Spending time with women.
That's because, oh, nice job, Larry. All right, I like that. Oh, and there's another one. Hi, Dad. So, thanks for coming. I'm going to quickly tell you my story, because that's kind of the funny part and embarrassing part. And then my prediction of the future of food, I think it's mine. And it's as educated as 6.5 years can get me. And I'm reading another book, and I have an education. I have 2 Bachelor of Science degrees, but I'm reading Economics for Dummies. It's hysterical, and the guy's from Berkeley. It's a really funny book, but it's good. And so now I have a better outlook from reading that book in the last couple of weeks. So I called up Kim, who always is looking for an argument, and said, so Linda just hung up on me. What's up with that? And she said, well, okay, here's the deal. Now that's not a good lead-in either. I'm like, oh, something's true here. And she said, all you guys talk about for the last 3 months on our vacation, that's all you talked about. All you talk about is slaughtering and antibiotics and the world's falling apart and global warming, and we're all gonna die because we eat bad food, and we're serving you the food that you're pointing at and talking about. You know what's in that? You got that at Costco, didn't you? Do you know what's in that? And you say that, and you eat it. You keep eating. It's not like you stopped eating, so you're completely a hypocrite. And then you never give us a solution. So that's why we're not inviting you over. You two got to get beyond this one, because we can't stand it anymore. I'm like, fine. I hung up the phone. I'll do this myself. And so, the family's like, oh my God, 4 boys and my husband, what does that mean to us? Oh my God, our life's going to change. Angry menopausal woman. Oh no. And so we spent the next year deciding we're going to do something about that was. And one of the things I had come across in that 3 months was Joel Salatin's books. He's the farmer in Virginia that lives in, I think it's Swope, Virginia, that writes all about, and he's an international speaker now, but writes all about managed intensive grazing, rotational grazing, and what that means. And it means everything to the planet, the animals, our health, the meat we eat, the soil, microbial life. It's the actual life cycle, and it's got this fancy name of intensively managed rotational grazing. I usually can't remember how to say it all, but all it is that you bring the cows across the grass, they eat half of it, you move them away after a day because you only want them to eat half so the grass can recover faster. And so then the cow poos, and you bring the chickens in behind that. The chicken poo gets all on the ground. The chickens go into the cow poo and scratch it out after 5 to 7 days. All the fly larvae has hatched, and that's protein for them. And they scratch the cow pie around, so it's better fertilizing the ground. And then you can bring in pigs if you want, if the ground is hard and needs to be dug up, so you can get some of that fertilizer from the animals inside of it. So it depends on your pasture and your land if you want pigs in there or not. But they also fertilize. And then that fertilizer that they've all put down is food for microbial life. So all the little things in the ground, all the little insects that eat all that stuff, and all the little animals that eat microbial life and insects. There's life cycles here. And when a microbial life eat poo, they turn it into poo, which has nutrients for grass to grow. So that feeds the grass, and the grass grows. It does photosynthesis, gets the carbon out of the air, and the grass through photosynthesis puts the carbon back into the ground. 50% of that goes to feed microbial life. So there's another life cycle. 50% stays in the ground where it ought to be instead of up there causing global warming. So that's a life cycle process that Joel Salatin and many people have known long ago. Maybe not as much science, but we took that away when we started Big Ag. When we decided to move food as fast as we could move it, as efficiently as possible, when we only consider the dollar versus anything, there's no consideration for the health of the land, the animal, the meat that we're going to eat, and our environment. That doesn't matter. It's how quickly can I do it and how cheap can I do it. So how many people in here try to eat gluten-free or celiac? Okay, that's growing. I've been like that for ages. Isn't it interesting though? If I go to Italy, I can eat pasta there. I love going to Italy because I was 210 pounds when I had my last kid. I was at like 2 weeks overdue, and I just shoveling in the pasta. It was just amazing. I love pasta, but in the gluten-free pasta, there's a couple of good ones out now that are good. But I always wondered why. Why is it that I can eat it over there, but I can't eat it here? Here's why. We can eat a teeny bit of gluten, which used to be in the wheat from the old seeds, but now we've hybrided that wheat into doing, 10, now I forgot the numbers, but it's 10 million pounds of whatever per acre more, faster, quicker wheat than what we used to grow naturally. And in that hybridization, we grew 5%, and that's the real number that I care about, 5% bigger or more quantity of gluten per seed. We can't process that well in our systems. Most people can't. And what's interesting, if you're a regular guy or gal and you stop eating that, it's really tough to go back to that. You'll get a stomach ache because your system, and you can lose like around 10 pounds because every cell in your body gains water weight to protect itself from that much gluten. So that's an issue. But we've gotten kind of used to it, and we do kind of eat that stuff, the breads and all the white stuff that includes all that extra gluten that we're not used to eating. Not this generation from, people that are 65, 70 years old and down. We're not supposed to eat that stuff. Anyway, I don't grow wheat, so it's not really what we do. So anyway, after a year, we got into following the Joel Salatin method. I just copied. I didn't do anything special. I'm not smarter than somebody else. All I did is say, what do we have to lose? I have to do something about this food thing. I want to educate people about what's wrong with the food they eat so they can choose to do something else. If you're a vegetarian, a vegan, you eat meat, you don't, I don't care. But choose. What I care about is that you're choosing healthy food. If you're only going to eat vegetables, eat organic, clean vegetables from the farmer. You watch that person. I can go to that farm best organic vegetables I think around are from Terra Firma Farms up in Winters, and they have a booth here. I'm trying to get them to box up our vegetables for us, because I don't grow vegetables, we do all the meat. And so you can go there, you can walk around the pastures, you can see, or local community gardens, where you can see the vegetables being grown, where you can see that the chicken is out on pasture walking around, because the most important thing with vegetables, even vegetables and animals, the number one most important thing to have a healthy meal from them is what? Does anybody know what that is? Can anybody guess? Come on, take a chance. It's love, but tell me what love looks like.
Animals in a natural environment.
Because when they're loved, put in a natural environment, so they don't have any cortisol coming into their muscle meat on a regular basis, because they're not stressed out. No stress, and that's loving them. So animals out on pasture, and that's what Joel Salatin was all about. And it wasn't just animals out in the pasture, it was rotating them to build soil. So he'll call himself a grass farmer. I call him a microbial life farmer. That's what we do, because without the microbial life you can't feed the grass, and without the rain you can't do much anything of anything. But it's life cycles that we've broken. So we spent a year finding the land. We have 300 acres over on the south side of Petaluma, really close to Novato. We're open 7 days a week. You can come and walk around the farm. Our members have membership isn't an extra fee. It's just that you buy at least $100 a month of food from us, and that members can go anywhere on the farm they want 7 days a week. You just show up and walk around. You can go fishing, you can hike, we have a big huge barn tented, so you can have a picnic. You can if you're a member, you can have an anniversary party, birthday parties, wedding receptions. We don't technically do weddings, even though we've had people get married there, 50 to 60, 100 people. We have all the things to provide for you to have a farm experience kind of thing. We do farm-to-table dinners. Most of them now are tending to be private, because people bring over, we want to throw a party for my 30 to 50 friends, or whatever it might be. So we did that for education. We have free tours Saturdays and Sundays, 10, noon, and 2 every weekend. So people can come. You don't need to RSVP. We can come and we walk you around to show you what it looks like for a baby chick to grow up on natural compost. So at 2 weeks old, it then goes out to pasture, and it has already then taken up from that compost natural antibiotics into its gut. So when it gets out on pasture, it's really healthy. And we never have sick animals, because we make sure the babies get what they need naturally, so when they're out on pasture, they're strong and robust. And it isn't hard to do. It's physically hard to do. We have mostly guys working in the field, a couple of gals. There's heavy lifting, and when you have to move pigs from one pasture to the next, somebody's invariably, falling down and getting all muddy or whatever it may be, if it was dependent on the time of year, especially in the winter time when it rains. But it's a completely different environment than what I was in before. And I couldn't imagine going back to an office.
My name is Elena Carolina. I'm an executive director for Benicia Community Gardens, and we've been dedicated to local sustainable food for almost 15 years now. We're both growing food, and we are supporting our local farmers who bring food here. And today is a great day, because all our programs and projects are represented here. But what makes this day very special is we are launching our very new program that we call Benicia Sustainable Backyard. And the main idea is to bring permaculture to our town, permanent agriculture and permanent culture. In the next 2 years, we plan to establish 1 acre of permacultural food forest in Benicia. At the same time, we are, I shouldn't say building, we are supporting a creation of Benicia Urban Farm, a distributed farm, a community of different people producing food on their own backyards. And a lot of it is already happening in Benicia. We know there are people with chickens, there are people with ducks, with rabbits. We know even that there are people with bees, even though it's still not legal in Benicia to keep bees. And our first phase of the Benicia Urban Farm, Benicia Community Chickens, are represented there as well. We're going to have small talks today about how to start chicken coop in Benicia, how to create nest, how to feed, and how to make your chickens happy. And we're going to have a very interesting educational program. Our first speaker, Trathen Heckman, will be here today. He is the chair of the board of Transition USA, and that they are building structures in our communities for post-peak oil. So what's going to happen when we cannot do what we're doing now? Then our next speaker is coming in 2 weeks on September 26th, the best-selling permacultural author Toby Hemingway. We're very lucky to get him here in Benicia. He will be talking about what permaculture is and what it can do. Our next speaker, Christopher Shane, will be here on October 25th. He is very specific in how a vegetable gardener could move towards more perennial agriculture and more permanent agriculture. And our last speaker, Denise Russian, she is very focused on social permaculture, because permaculture can be applied to creating societies and eco-spirituality. So we hope that we have a lot of Benicians in our talks. And keep your eye open for the workshops on how to install food forest, how to build grey water system, how to shoot multi-lawn, and a lot of other exciting things. And the last thing, but not the least, we're trying to accomplish is we do need local jobs, and we don't believe that a local non-profit could sustain a program like this for a long time. So our goal is to build structures in Benicia that will carry it over. So we are envisioning the creation of at least 2 small businesses, one permacultural or edible landscaping and one local nursery, because plants, the perennial food producing plants, are hard to obtain. And since we're going to be bringing them to our community from afar, it will be a shame to lose the planting material. So we already have a stock to start our nursery.
Well, I'm David Mudge, and I actually live in Martinez. I have a permaculture design certificate from Merritt College, and I've been interested in permaculture for many years, and I didn't really know it. And permaculture is not a religion, it's a philosophy that's ever evolving. It started about 40 years ago with Bill Mollison and David Holmgren in Australia. They coined the name permaculture as a contraction of the 2 words permanent agriculture. And that's a misdemeanor really, because it isn't permanent, it's ever evolving. The concepts are ever evolving. Permaculture is based on the ethics of earth care, people care, and fair share. And if you go around the world, people, if you mention permaculture, can probably recite those to you. There's also 12 principles that go along with that. So it's applying principles of permaculture such as observe and interact and create a yield and harvest small amounts of energy. There's 12 of those, and they fit into 7 domains of life, really, one of which is gardening, agriculture, food. But there's also transportation, finance, housing, land management, law, community. 7 different domains in which the principles are applied to, and under the ethics of earth care, people care, and fair share. So I'm particularly interested in the gardening aspect of this because I'm a professional gardener, and I try and encourage people to use permaculture principles, and that often means growing food in their backyards. And this project that's been started by Benicia Community Gardens is all about backyard food forests. And by food forests, we're talking about the use of vertical space as would be used in a natural forest system. It's related to companion planting, and in permaculture we sometimes use the word guilds. That's where a group of plants naturally grow around a certain tree, for example, or in a certain environment. We've got some demonstration pictures behind me of an apple tree guild. And we're showing people what it might look like to have a backyard food forest where food is growing at different layers, and actually, well, let's go back to the plots that what we're actually doing with the backyard sustainable project is we're offering 10 backyard gardens over the next 2 years. They would be free of charge with a few conditions, in that they would be demonstration plots. And this is really part of what I'm about, I think, because of the education and the inspiration for people to use permaculture in their own backyard as an everyday lifestyle experience. So we would install these gardens free of charge with volunteers as an educational process, and we would either maintain them, or the homeowners could maintain them themselves, or they could pay someone else to maintain them. We'd require a commitment for 5 years, but we would also use them to show people how we've developed the site, what we've planted, how we've used gray water from their laundry to water the trees, how we've saved water, and how we've created a yield from their backyard. And we hope that there'll be add-on projects to this, such as developing a nursery, whereby if people wanted to add plants to their basic seed plot, then they could buy plants to add to them. We would also fuel our own additional gardens from the nursery. The idea is also that perhaps bees will become legal in Benicia at some point, so we would add a beehive where it's appropriate, and then we'd have a class or a demonstration about how to safely incorporate bees and their usefulness in the garden. Chickens, vermiculture, aquaponics, all sorts of other projects that would be educational and informative, and we hope to use that as the educational component of what we're doing, creating food forests. And is that probably about enough?
Yeah, you might say how people, for these 10 demonstration gardens, how would they apply for that?
All right. The application process starts on October the 1st, 2014. And we have a little questionnaire that's based on our permaculture direction. A little bit about what you have, and perhaps most importantly, what you would like to have and what your vision of your backyard and your food forest might be. And then we are really limited to the number that we can install, and we feel that perhaps there'll be some other funds coming to help us install more, but we're going to have to do a selection process, which is going to be pretty brutal as far as cutting it down to a small number of food forests that we can install this year. And the applications end on November 15th, I think it is. And so then we'll review them, and we'll publicly go through the applications, and we'll announce the successful applicants, but we'll also go through and look at different scenarios that we've been given, and perhaps identify some of the reasons why they didn't fit into this grant application, why they weren't successful, but what could be done to mitigate or to create a success given more resources.
So everybody wins.
So everybody wins. So it continues the inspiration and educational aspect. And actually, personally, I would like to see a few backyards that are a bit of a challenge, because that edge of, can we do this? Is it possible to do this? I feel like that's the creative challenge in putting together a package where we could develop something to overcome what might look like a serious obstacle. Because one thing about permaculture and applying the principles is that everything is site specific. It's really hard to say it always has to be this way. because there's so many components that come together to create a successful permaculture design. And some of these projects that perhaps have a lot of concrete in them, or that are very windy, have a really thin soil, they have a steep slope, whatever it is, they wouldn't necessarily fit into our application process. They would be weeded out pretty quickly, but they might have great potential if we weren't given the criteria that we're working with.
I'm Mary Condit, and I'm with the Benicia Community Gardens, and I have been with the Community Gardens about a year or two after it was developed. And I've enjoyed being with the gardens ever since. I was nominated to be secretary, and it was the first time in my life I'd ever been a secretary. So I had, at 78, I learned how to be a secretary. And I also learned how to use a computer, sort of. And the computer sometimes plays tricks on me, even though they tell me that it's not the computer. I was raised on a farm, and we helped with the gardens, and people who knew me and family members laughed because my row was always the longest. It had more weeds in it than my sister's, and I always had something to complain about. But actually, I learned a lot about other things. I could watch a spider that carried its eggs on its back, or another spider that was spinning, and I'd put a insect in its web for it. And I was sort of hard. It was sort of hard for my mother to keep up with me on that sort of thing. And so I've gotten a lot of kidding about it as an adult, enjoying gardening so much because they didn't expect it of me. But I love to garden, and I love to pass on my knowledge. If I have something to share, that is part of my joy in gardening. I like to share, and I raise things that I can share, whether it's vegetables or my begonias or geraniums. And I live in a house here in Benicia that the extent of the backyard is all cement for a recreational vehicle. So most of my gardening is done in pots around the edge of this large expanse of cement, which is wonderful for my great-grandchildren to write things on in chalk. So, and the girls, my little girl great-grandchildren will help spray the roses for black spots, and so we're passing on the gardening to them.
Where did you grow up on a farm?
I grew up on a dryland farm about 10 miles from Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. And we had a wonderful view of the valley, and sometimes when I was supposed to be weeding up on the hillside, I could look out across the valley and see the ripples of the wind in the grain fields below.
Hi, my name is Stacy, and I am with the Benicia Community Chickens group. And we are going over why would you want to keep backyard chickens? Well, there are several reasons why people decide to raise backyard chickens, and that is to keep them as pets, because chickens are really interesting, because they're interested in where their food comes from and how it is produced. They make great garden companions because they eat bugs. They provide compost. They teach responsibility to children, and they provide greater food nutrition. So, nutritional facts. A study was conducted in 2007 comparing the nutritional qualities of the average store-bought egg to a homegrown egg, the USDA versus a pasture or backyard raised egg. And the study found that eggs from backyard chickens have 1/3 less cholesterol, 1/4 less saturated fat, 2/3 more vitamin A, 2 times more omega-3 fatty acids, 3 times more vitamin E, and 7 times more beta-carotene, and 4 to 6 times more vitamin D. Now, I say that's reason enough alone to want to have your own backyard chickens. They support sustainability They help provide food for families. They aid in economic and environmental sustainability, which is what we all want. They're great recyclers. They eat chicken scraps, insects, and weeds and turn them into manure. This white gold, given this nickname for a high concentration of nutrients for soil, can be composted and used to fertilize backyard gardens without the use of chemicals. So there you have it. You have an organic way to provide more nutrition to the plants that you're growing and keep pests away. During World War II, people living in towns were encouraged to raise chickens as their civic duty. The United States Department of Agriculture posters encouraged U.S. families to raise hens in their backyards. In fact, one poster even read, 2 hens in the backyard for each person in the house will keep a family in fresh eggs. Whether you decide to buy chicken feed or make your own, feeding chickens can be very easy. Chicken feed can be purchased at most farm supply stores. We have one in Vallejo, one in Concord, one in Petaluma. You can buy organic or regular Purina brand. There are other brands too. If you're making your own feed, be sure you are providing enough meat to meet their dietary needs. Chickens greatly enjoy eating chicken scraps like apple cores, potato peelings, and more. Birds' digestive tracts also require some grit, which we have plenty of in town. It is important to make sure your birds have access to small pebbles to supplement their food with grit, which can be purchased at farm supply stores or outside in your own gardens. And of course, like all animals, chickens need water. They should have constant access to a clean water supply source. Chickens will not drink water that is dirty. They're very picky about that. So check the water feeder every once in a while. For shelter, housing for backyard flocks ranges from very complex to very simple. We want to keep things simple. You need 3 to 4 square feet per chicken for a coop. For outdoor space, you want at least 10 square feet per chicken, which isn't very much. It's best to let chickens range a little bit. You don't always have to let them range. You can keep them in the coop, but they'll be happier if they're let outside occasionally. Many pre-made backyard coops are available for purchase online or at farm supply stores. Letting them run outside will greatly increase the production and the health of your flocks, and also the nutrition of their eggs. In the winter, you don't need to worry. Benicia winters are very mild. You don't need to worry about providing a source of heat. Chickens are very weatherproof, so they do well outside in the rain or in the snow if that ever happens. Birds will also instinctively dust themselves, and they like to roll in the dust and the dirt, and that keeps mites and other little lice and other chicken mites at bay. So there's more information available. Recommended books are Story's Guide to Raising Chickens or The Joy of Keeping Chickens. Those are great resources. There's also magazines like the Mother Earth News that you can read online. And there's also a website called backyardchickens.com where you can go and ask questions of the other members and have all your questions answered. And that's it.
My name is Marilyn Bardet, and I am actually chairman of the board of Benicia Community Gardens, the organization that got started in about, as an organization, as a nonprofit in 2003. But actually our first garden was started in 1999 by a group of people very concerned about bringing healthy living, healthy lifestyles, and really healthy food to Benicia. So we started Swenson Garden up there by Heritage Presbyterian Church, and then we started many years later, after we were a nonprofit, Avant Garden that many of you have walked by probably, on First Street across from the Union Hotel. This represents a huge leap. Today what is happening here is all about something that we have talked about on the board, but had not gotten around quite to defining ourselves in terms of it, and that's permaculture. And if you think about the word, if you've never heard of it, it's perma and culture. So that means permanent culture. Well, what does that mean? Well, it has a direct reference to food, which Trathen will talk about, and food production by perennial means, meaning perennial agriculture for good reasons, to do with sustainability and what our yards can produce and what farms can produce if we think of ourselves as living in a sustainable way. Sustainability is a big issue. The word is tossed around so glibly now that people hardly pay attention to it. But we have developed a city commission called the Sustainability Commission, by which, I have to say, Benicia Community Gardens received a rather large grant, fortunately, for a 2-year program called the Sustainable Backyard Program, which you will get to learn more about by going to our booth if you haven't heard about it. There will be a lot more information about it coming up. I want to thank all the volunteers who have really gotten on board with Elena, our executive director, who is right here. Elena is the primary organizer today for all of our efforts in conjunction with this expo. And Elena is an inspired leader. You can trust that anything you do with Elena is going to be well thought through, well organized, and full of spirit. And I think that that is absolutely fundamental to what we're about, is building community and making us feel that we belong to something very important for the future, because the future is upon us. Things are changing, and I can vouch that we are moving away from a fossil fuel consuming culture. And I have to say, the only reason I'm not here all day is because I'm home writing about the Valero Crude by Rail project that I hope all of you have heard about. And it is an emblem of what we are moving away from. I want to introduce Trathen now, who is our key speaker for today. Trathen comes to us from Daily Acts, a nonprofit organization started in Sonoma with his inspiration and others. They have a magnificent board. They have done incredible work in Sonoma, and the way I heard about them was through a young person in Benicia. I call him young because I'm so old. Mike Marcus, who I knew from when he was 12 years old here. He was already a community activist at age 12 and an artist. And lo and behold, he went to San Luis Obispo school. He became a planner and someone concerned about sustainability. He ended up working for our city as a planner for a few years as he got his feet wet. We developed a climate action plan as a result of Mike Marcus, and he told me before leaving his job and going back to North Carolina, "You should meet Trathen." And I said, "Who's Trathen?" "Well, he's from Daily Acts in Sonoma. Don't you know about it?" "No, because I'm in the trenches here." So I want Trathen to tell you all about what he's up to and what kind of connection he has with what we're doing today. Thank you, Trathen.
Thank you so much. So first, thank you so much, Elena and Marilyn and team, for having me here. One of my favorite things on the planet to do is to sit like this with small, engaged groups of people who are making amazing things happen in their communities. Because this is what's happening. Like, we know that a lot of the scale of the challenges we're facing, but every single day in every nook, cranny, and watershed across this planet, 24 hours a day, folks are gathering under tents and at churches and under trees and in community gardens, and they're talking about how they could get together and they could reconnect to their inspiration and their purpose, and they could reconnect to nature, and they could reconnect to and regenerate community. And that's pretty much what humans have always done to adapt and thrive in challenging times, is reestablish those three core connections. And I'm going to start off with a few quotes, and I made some notes. For about 10 years, I don't think I did a single presentation on PowerPoint, and now for some reason I do a lot of PowerPoints, because we have a lot of images to show, and so I think I've gotten hooked on my PowerPoints. So anyways, the first quote I want to share that I think all of you have heard is by Margaret Mead. And 13 years ago, on our very first sustainability tour, starting out at Laguna Farm CSA, before there was even a Daily Acts, 70 people came together to go to a organic farm and to go to a permaculture site and a naturally built building and different activities. And so I said the words from Margaret Mead about never doubt the ability of a small group of people to change the world, because that is all that has ever been. And I'm gonna, as Marilyn mentioned, I'm gonna share a bit of stories about some of our work, really as just an example of kind of what's possible through time. And I do a lot of work. I'm the founding director of Daily Acts organization, which I'll talk about, and I'm also the board chair of Transition US, which I'll talk a bit about. And so I spend a lot of my time with just this, small groups of people who are engaged doing amazing things. And there really are a lot of us all over the planet. And so, you know, most of what we've accomplished in the last decade plus has been from, you know, this 15, 20, 30, you know, sometimes we do big events and we have hundreds or even thousands of people engaged, but a lot of times it's really pretty much been this, and folks with the name tags and the signs are here to help and engage. So I'm even more excited to speak with a lot of you who are already on the ground in supporting this project. And so the second quote I want to read is from Confucius. And he said, to put the world in order, we must first put the nation in order. And to put the nation in order, we must first put our family in order. And to put our family in order, we must first cultivate our personal life. And to cultivate our personal life, we have to set our hearts right. You know, and so just getting that correct for us of, you know, it all starts with reverence in our heart. And reverence not just as this awestruck wonder in this beautiful place, this little keyhole that the whole Central Valley is energetically pouring through into the San Francisco Bay, this area that, you know, the skies are black with birds and grizzly bears and things a couple hundred years ago, this place of incredible biological and cultural diversity. This is an epic place, but reverence as defined by the stately determination to make something worthy of the materials in the moment. And at this moment with us right here, and this moment with the launch of Sustainable Backyard, and it's this big moment of record drought where 3/4 of our state is an exceptional drought. And it's this big moment of climate disruption and species extinction and culture loss and a lot of really difficult issues to wake up to. But again, like I mentioned, it's also this moment where people are coming together and living lives of richness and reverence and resilience and creating this handcrafted culture of stewardship and celebration. So it's, you know, to me, there's never been a time when your choices have mattered more, and there's never been a more amazing time to be alive. And so for all the difficulties and the work you do every day and figuring out how to balance with family and life and bills and difficult news, just coming back to that sense of joy and the importance of this time. So it all starts with reverence in our heart. Anybody here heard of Margaret Wheatley before? Really amazing ecologist. So one of the things that she said that helps me make sense of things and just reground into what matters when we're looking at this off-the-chart scale of the challenges we're facing, is she said, rather than worry about critical mass, our work is to foster critical connections. We don't need to convince large numbers of people to change. Instead, we need to connect with kindred spirits. And through these relationships, we will develop the new knowledge, practices, courage, and commitment that will lead to broad-based change. So starting with our heart to get the rest of it in order. Finding our critical connections. We don't have to get everybody, we just have to find, like here, the critical connections in our communities. And the third one is I was at the Heirloom Expo doing a few talks on Thursday on 9/11, and that was actually what a key catalyst for starting Daily Acts organization. And it was the tragedy of 9/11 and a bunch of painful things that happened around that, and then the loss of my mom suddenly a month later. That combination of personal and national crisis is what got me to actually step up and do something in a bigger way. And so some words that I read and came to me and were very soothing in the time, especially when there's full media shutdown and there was nothing being put out on a national scale other than consuming is patriotic. And so this woman, Clarissa Pinkola Estes, incredible writer, and this kind of compilation quote of a long piece she read, and she said, ours is not the task to fix the entire world at once, but it's to stretch out and to mend the part that is within our reach. Yes. Because one of the most calming and powerful things you could do in a stormy world is to stand up and show your soul, because soul on deck shines like gold in dark times, and struggling souls catch light from others who are fully lit and willing to share it. And so starting with the inspiration in our heart and starting with living our inspiration and finding our critical connections and recognizing that, you know, we may just be able to change the world in a garden, in a backyard sustainable garden, in a front yard sustainable garden. And so out of kind of those core inspirations and reference points, myself and a few others started Daily Acts almost 13 years ago, and about not the chopping axe, but the power of our daily actions, the ripple effect, that your ripple could be the ripple that sparks community transformation. And that by transforming our lives and our homes and our gardens and our neighborhoods and our communities and our watersheds, we can transform our world, especially when there's whole networks of us all over the place doing this. And it's about reestablishing those three core connections to self, nature, and community. And so what we do programmatically is a lot of what you're seeing here today that you are involved in. We do presentations, we share a vision of what's possible. We say, yes, there are very painful big issues, and it's an amazing time to be alive, and your choices matter, and your community connections matter. And people come out and they want to learn about gray water and rainwater and food forests and things, but a lot of times what's unspoken is what they're really hungry for is connection, because we're missing these core connections. And then so they get connected with a community of support and peers. And then they're getting reconnected to this big planetary moment. And the fact that living our potential, you know, when we tap into the intrinsic force that's in each one of us, that is the core intrinsic force of life on this planet, which is to help life flourish. When we tap into that, and we're operating from that place of strengthening those three core connections, then we create conditions conducive for transformations, conditions conducive to transform people and places from neighborhoods to nations by tapping into those core principles. And so Daily X teaches people about how to grow food and keep bees and tend community. We go from doing presentations to doing sustainability tours, and we go around and we'll show people these incredible gardens and these intentional communities and green-built homes, and it's the smell, touch, and taste and the voice and face of the healthy, just world being born. And so they get inspired and connected to what's possible, and they get connected with each other. And at the same time, you have this person who's fortunate enough to be on the mic getting to share their bit of the story, which hopefully we all can do, because finding our voice is critical. Gotta keep things lively. So then we're lifting up those existing and emerging green and engaged leaders to find their voices. And great when they're an expert, renowned ecologist or author or something, but even more powerful sometimes is they're just finding their voice, and the words aren't all perfect and honed, but they're speaking from their heart. They're moving through their fear and speaking about what's important. And that really empowers and engages people. And in that process, then we connect these networks of sustainability leaders on tours and workshops. We get some media coverage for it, and then we do our best to help other folks replicate these sort of models and learn from each other. A permaculture teacher named Rob Hopkins, permaculture, this ecological design science that's rooted in the wisdom of nature and the wisdom of people who've always known how to live well in place. Ethics and principle centered. What it looks like, produce no waste, the ecological principle may be different in Benicia than sub-Saharan Africa, but that principle is timeless and true, woven with exactness and beauty through the fabric of life. Those things happen everywhere. So that principled essence, ethics, earth care, people care, fair share. Pretty basic, right? Like, we know how to do this. And so this permaculture teacher he wakes up, peak oil, peak water, climate crisis, all these issues, and he writes a book called The Transition Handbook, recognizing we're in this historic moment of transition on our planet, in our communities, and it just takes off like wildfire. And so now, he wrote the book about 9 years ago, and there's over 1,100 small grassroots transition groups, sustainability groups, in over 43 countries. And so one of the groups that came to the U.S. to help this spread more is Transition US, as a national hub organization that's based out of Sonoma County as well. And so I've been on the board for that for 5 years, the board of directors. And when I joined it, we had 9 groups. And now there's 151 groups in 37 states.
Can we join?
Yes, you absolutely can. And that's even better. Local groups who are doing great work that's place-based. And then you share your models with other groups, and other people start replicating what you're doing. And that's a lot of what's happening, right? It's not top-down. It's the grassroots sharing their inspiration, their vision, their voice, their local programs. So all this said, I spend a lot of my time, again, with small groups of people trying to make amazing change happen. And ironically, there's about $300 billion a year that in the US that goes to small grassroots groups. Well, not all of it, but 80% of it, more or less, goes to organizations under $500,000. So the vast majority of the resources are actually going to small groups. So how can we be more effective, and how can we share best practices and learn from each other and work together? So that's kind of a lot of my intent. We practice permaculture where we live and have chickens and bees and ducks flux and rainwater and gray water and can and dry and freeze and ferment and all this good stuff that we love. But how we take that out into our neighborhoods and our communities is kind of the focus of the work of our organization. And so, one thing, let me look at the time. Okay. So just starting with this, this idea of resilience. Do people here know what resilience is? This concept of when faced with adversity or challenge, your ability to adapt and spring back, to keep core things functioning well. It applies to a person in their life, it applies to a home, it applies to economies and ecologies. A big business goes out of business in town. What's the impact of that? A natural disaster, an earthquake happens. What's the impact of that? Like, how do we rebuild the resilience of our communities? And so after Superstorm Sandy, a study was done that showed which are the more resilient and which are the less resilient communities. And what they found is that what it comes down to is, maybe said slightly differently, is trust and community cohesion, neighbor to neighbor relationships. Because when we're building resilience in our backyards, in our front yards, in our homes, and we're getting engaged and we're getting our own house in order, we're getting our heart in order and our house in order, and we're building those relationships and we're growing a bunch of food and saving resources, then we're also often getting engaged and we're out there at the city council meetings, getting them interested in this, and we're figuring how we have more local businesses and how we get a local power company like we just got in Sonoma County, Sonoma Clean Power, the second one in the state, to have a community choice aggregation. So we have local power now. And so those citizens, these small groups of people, are playing a really critical role in the larger community. And so, some indicators of that in my mind, true to your work here, is you walk down the street, are neighbors smiling and talking to each other? Do you have community gardens in your downtown? Are there fruit trees? Are there berry bushes? Do you have local farms? Terra at Terra Firma lives right down the street from us. I'm really thankful that they're in our community. So do you have local farms? Are you working towards local power? A lot of these sort of pieces are some of the indicators that are already here, and other ones that we're collectively trying to build towards in this work. And so, so for Daily X work, and a lot of organizations are rooted in a core few reference points. And so for me, I was getting overwhelmed by the state of the world. And so I started looking around for solutions, and I started coming across these incredible people who are doing great things, and they're living in their passion and their purpose and regenerating, nature and regenerating farms and things. I didn't really have words for it, but they were coming from a different place. There was something different about how they were showing up, and I didn't know what it was, but I was like, wow, that is very appealing, whatever that thing is. And so then I went to Bioneers Conference, which I recommend. Who here's been to Bioneers?
Oh, I wish to go.
Oh, next month you have to go to Bioneers. It's the 25th anniversary, 2,000 of us together for a weekend with some of the most inspiring off-the-chart speakers you'll ever hear in your life. It's in San Rafael, bioneers.org, and we'll be doing a presentation and an all-day workshop with them. And incredible conference. And so being immersed and not just overwhelmed, but a whole community of people who are coming from their joy and their passion, their purpose, and they're dealing with big struggles, but they're living in vital ways and affecting amazing change. And it's an incredible network. And so that was one of the references. Another one was these folks. And then I went to this place called the Permaculture Institute in Northern California, which I know Rick studied at the Penny Livingston. That was their place before Commonweal Garden. And I stepped into this half-acre backyard that was a lawn not that long ago. And the people who created this permaculture garden were saying all these great things, but it was just this direct transmission of this vitality and this fecundity. It was this living ecosystem, and there was food everywhere and medicine everywhere and habitat. And they had a pond that their gray water fed, and when they dug the pond they had all this clay. So what do they do with the clay? They make an earthen cob building, and so they have art and beauty in that, and they make a dragon head pizza oven out of the side of the building. So you're building community, eating pizza out of the side of your building, and there's living fences out of fruit trees. And it was that I was like, I didn't even know what it was, but I'm like, whatever this is, I need more of it in my life. And that's mainly what we've been doing for over a decade, is figuring out how to tap into that flourishing vitality that life has, that we all have, in words and on page and in community and in tours and in workshops. And the thing that Marilyn so beautifully quoted about Elena, showing up with that vitality in things. He wrote a book called Gaia's Garden, and in that he talks about this point in an ecological garden when the whole system just goes pop, and it surges with vitality, and it's able to sift, sort, and transform any drop of water, any ray of sunshine, any bit of wind, any scrap of carbon into this thriving ecosystem of plants and animals and relationships. And so that, when you start to plant these gardens, you start to get the garden to go pop, and then things start to pop in your life. And then from there we could have the neighborhood go pop, and the community, and the city, and the watershed, and beyond. And so the core elements that he speaks to that help the garden go pop are building soil, sheet mulching lawns, putting in wood chips, mulch producing plants, like building up the soil is really primary. Bringing a beneficial diversity of plants and animals. We have perennials and annuals and a zillion different types of edible flowers and vines and all kinds of things. Beneficial animals, bees and chickens and ducks, bringing in habitat for other critters, right? When we're planting these plants, there's more other pollinators and critters coming through. Using green and natural building and greening our buildings as well. And then the fifth one is the human stewards. It's our role, right? It's not just about nature. We are a part of nature. And so when we're doing this, we are becoming more aware, engaged, conscious stewards. And so those are the elements that help us, just like the program elements that you all are going to be doing, that help a garden go pop. So then how can we apply that to our neighborhood? How can we help our neighborhood go pop? So we partner with the city of Petaluma. One of the things we do is we have a lot of water conservation contracts with local municipalities and the water agency. And so we come in through water, and then we do all these other permaculture things. And so I was sitting with the water coordinator, city of Petaluma, at our house one day and hanging out in the garden, giving them food and stuff. And then I said, Dave, we should plant a food forest. And he's like, what's a food forest? And so I started explaining the 7 layers of this edible ecology, again, like the materials over there. And just mimicking nature again, mimicking nature. And so we went across the street to the Kavanaugh Center Boys and Girls Club, and his boss wasn't super into the idea yet, but he's like, okay, save water. And so over 3 days, 150 volunteers came out, 85 degree heat, and not spring chickens as well. Like, we had folks in their 50s and 60s that were digging in clay. And his boss, the head of the water department, comes over on this weekend, and he's walking there with his family, and he's kind of stunned looking. He's sort of like, it's super hot out. People are digging in clay. They're smiling like crazy. They're just having an amazing time, whatever it is they're doing. And he's like, what is this, And so through that, we dropped water use, conservation, water conservation. That's why we were doing it for the city, 70–80%. But then we also kept all the materials on site and mulched those materials. And we dug swales, these water harvesting ditches. We did swale trails. So you walk on it in the summer, and in the winter, it soaks in the stormwater. Now there's new state stormwater requirements. Doesn't come with any funding for the cities to actually do anything about it. But we've been doing stormwater for them since day one. They hired us for conservation, but it's like, well, we'll cover stormwater, and we'll cover community engagement, and we'll cover food, and we'll cover medicine, we'll cover habitat, and we'll train people on these things, get them connected, get them inspired, and help them better utilize your municipal incentive programs, which will help you kind of transform and be more ecological. So after that, then we went next door, and the neighbors that live next to them, Lori and Murray, they wanted to change their garden, but there's a lot of barriers, a lot of challenges. They were feeling a fallen down brick wall and not having resources and this and that and the other. And so we brought out 30 people over a span of 4 or 5 hours, and we rapidly transformed their garden, and we just turned problem after problem after problem into delectable, edible, beautiful, creative, artistic gardening. And so I just feel really honored to, one, get to share some of our work, and and this is, I always call it sustainable hedonism and selfish altruism, right? Hedonism not as in living in service for pleasure, that a lot of the way our culture is right now, greed and consumption and material based, but the pleasure of healthy food, and the pleasure of community, and the pleasure of being a part of something larger and being in your inspiration. And then the selfish altruism, this is who you get to hang out with. You get to hang out with really great people who are raising their kids different, and they're farming different, and they're growing different, and they're doing their business different, and they're doing their councils different, and their activities. And so just super thankful to get to share the work that a ton of hands have helped make happen. Our city partners, our business partners, our volunteers, our staff, our board, just the people that just show up like you all are.